I'm a hair mineral analysis expert. I have a background in functional medicine, and I educate people using HTMA testing to maximize health, erase debilitating symptoms, and gain energy. I'm a multi-time kettlebell sport world champion, and I'm constantly searching for high-performance pros from all over the world to bring you this human optimization podcast. My name is Lisa Pitel-Killah. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. And I am so super stoked today to have Nick VARBANOV with us. He is not only an Ontario junior and senior record holder with snatch, clean and jerk, and total in the 73 and 69 kilo weight class. He's also won 9 national championships and is the son of Alexander VARBANOV, who's a multi-time European and world champion, as well as an Olympic bronze medalist, which he achieved at the 1988 Seoul, Korea Olympics. He runs and coaches with his dad the VARBANOV School of Weightlifting, which you can find right now at the Academy of Lions in Toronto. And you can find them on Instagram at VARBANOV216, VARBANOV216, and also at www.varbanovschoolofweightlifting.com. So welcome, Nick. I'm so happy you decided to join us today.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to talk all about performance today with regards to your lifting, because that's pretty incredible. You've done so many records. You won so many national championships. You have so many accomplishments to be proud of. And I know that my listeners just want to know, how did you get started into lifting? What was your motivation?
So it goes way back to 10 years ago when I was just a little kid. Actually, it goes back way further than that, when my dad would still coach back home in Bulgaria. We had a local club there. They trained out of our basement because in our house back home, he decided to build a weightlifting gym and carry on his legacy. So I was just about 2 years old when I first stepped into a weightlifting gym and tried to push some bars around. Unfortunately, back then it didn't go my way, but things have changed now. So ever since then, I've just been really intrigued with the sport, and just seeing people succeed and talk so highly about it, and just the amount that you can learn from the sport is incredible, and I love doing it. I fell in love with it as soon as I started.
That's amazing. So had a gym in the basement, obviously, and that's where your dad was coaching, and where you kind of found it. And what was the first lift you learned?
First lift I learned was actually clean and jerk, which is obviously his personal favorite lift.
Yes.
So he carried it on to me, and I started clean and jerking the wooden dowel. It maybe weighed about like 4 pounds or something, but yeah. I was just learning technique with it back then and goofing around, and it was a very fun experience.
Wow, that's incredible. I love it. So tell me, I mean, obviously, your father, Alexander, having had so many different championships under his belt, including the Europeans and the worlds, and obviously an Olympic bronze medalist. What type of pressure was that for you? You know, was there ever any pressure of him wanting you to do or follow in his footsteps? Let's talk about that.
So there wasn't ever really any pressure on his side for me to be involved in weightlifting. When I was young, he had me doing swimming classes and playing soccer, and just being around sports and being involved in team sports and individual sports, and just learning the discipline sort of at a younger age. So there was never any pressure on his side telling me, hey, you know, I was this great lifter and now you got to follow in my footsteps. It was nothing like that. He was very supportive when I decided to start weightlifting professionally, and he's been guiding me through it pretty much my whole career. But there was never any sort of any pushing done on his side and pressuring me to do it. He always just said, as long as you're active and you're doing something that you love and enjoy and you're learning from it, then you stick to that. So
excellent. Well, that's nice to hear, because I know a lot
Yeah,
of times the struggle is real, right?
for
When
sure.
you've got a
Yeah,
mentor like that. So
for
yeah,
sure. He made it an easy choice to make.
that's excellent.
So.
Very good. So tell us about your training regime. I mean, obviously you've got to put in hours at the gym, you're doing coaching as well, but let's talk about your personal training regime. Kind of what does that entail for you? How does it look from week to week?
So pretty much what I try to do is stick to 6 to 7 sessions a week
Mm-hmm.
while I'm in school and while I'm working. Obviously, throughout the summer, we try to push it a little bit more. Sometimes we have 2 sessions a day. Sometimes the training hours are a little bit longer. Typically, we follow 3 days a week, 3 hours at the gym. So it would be Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We would start training around 5:30 p.m. end at about 8:30 or so. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, when the team is not training, and this is the Varbanov team I'm talking about, out
Mm-hmm.
of Academy of Lions, when they're not training, sometimes I'm in there with my dad, just doing the extra Tuesday, Thursday, and sometimes Saturday sessions as well. So throughout the week, it's pretty much all fully booked. Because I do work and I'm actually switching programs in school right now, it is a little bit harder to manage the time,
Mm-hmm.
but there's always gaps in the day where, I have 2 to 3 hours and I can go to the gym and I can put the work in. So you find time for it.
You know what you do when you love something and you want to excel at it, you definitely tend to be able to find that time, even when your
Yeah,
schedule
for
is as
sure.
packed as yours is, definitely.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit, break it down a bit, because I know that there's lots of Olympic lifters and power lifters and kettlebell lifters that are going to be watching and listening to this podcast. So for you, that 3 hour session, how would you break that down? What would that look like on any given day?
So we would obviously get into the gym, we would start with a little one-on-one lecture with my dad, since we haven't really seen each other throughout the day too much. He
Mm-hmm.
kind of catches up with me on what I've done, how I'm feeling, both mentally and physically, how my last night's sleep is, what my diet's been like throughout the day. So we kind of have a little chat about 20 minutes long, just to see how everything is going overall. Then I get into some active warm up myself for about half an hour, and 5:30 on the dot, we start typically with snatches or a snatch assistance exercise. So we try to keep the session similar to what a competition would look like. So in a competition, you obviously start off with your snatch, you do your warm up, your 3 lifts, you take a break, you start clean and jerk, warm up, 3 lifts, you're done. So we try to stick to that same sort of pattern. So we would start with snatch or snatch assistance exercise. Then we'd move into either clean and jerk, clean assistance exercise. And then we would finish off pretty much every session with a squat variation. So either front squat or back squat. Sometimes we go heavy. Sometimes we take it easy. It all depends on what we're supposed to be doing that day, what the programming is, and obviously how I'm feeling physically and mentally as well.
Absolutely. And so we'll get back to that kind of physical and mental
Mm-hmm.
part of that in a minute. But what's it like having your dad as a coach? Tell us about that.
So this might not be expected, but it's honestly a lot of fun. Reason being is he doesn't set any sort of expectations for me on his end. So it's a very welcoming environment that he creates for me personally when I train. He doesn't push me to do anything. He doesn't force me to do anything. So his mentality is nothing good comes out of making someone do something. They have to be willing to put the work in. And there is days where I am lazy and I don't want to be there. I don't want to be training. I just want to be at home on my laptop or watching a movie. Whatever the case may be, he always finds a way to get my head back on track and kind of put me back into the mentality of, hey, listen, you're in the gym right now. Everything that happened outside of the gym doesn't matter. You're here to put the work in, and you're here to let all that go and have these 3 hours for yourself. So he sets a very good environment for me to excel in, and I'm really happy having him as my coach. I don't think that I would work this well with anyone else, so I'm very happy with where we are.
That's excellent and pretty incredible. And sounds like he knows you very well to
I
understand.
think he knows me the
Yeah.
best for sure. Yeah,
Because
she
as
knows
a
everything
coach,
that happens.
and as a coach yourself, you know, right, that you really have to kind of dial in because all of your students are so different.
For sure.
And they all
Yeah.
have different needs, and everything is a little bit different physically and mentally for each person. So
Hmm.
that's pretty awesome. So let's talk a little bit about the physical. So nutrition. I mean, obviously, when you're a high performance athlete, when you're a high performer of any kind, dialing in nutrition and supplementation is super important.
Hmm.
So let's talk about that for you. I mean, what does that mean for you with the nutrition that you follow?
Um, so just like you said, it's very important, especially at an elite level, where you're trying to be in the best physical shape you can be, not only for competitions but for training sessions as well. So diet wise, I mostly eat homemade food. My mom and my dad cook every single night. We make meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Um, it's very rare that we go out and eat outside food unless it's really it's someone's birthday or it's something that deserves to go out and just let off a little bit. But typically my breakfast would be light, or it has been light these days. um I haven't had such a strong appetite waking up, so I would stick to like bacon and eggs, a little bit of toast, some veggies mixed in there as well. For lunch, we get into a little bit of a heavier carb load. So I would typically have rice or potatoes in almost every single one of my meals.
Mhm.
And same thing with dinner as well. And protein wise, I do a little bit of I guess a different scheme from what everyone else does. Is I like to get my protein in as soon as I can before I go to bed. Um, I don't like to carry it around with me throughout the whole day. I know that your body needs time to break it down and process it and absorb it. But I've just always felt very good physically when I have my proteins near the end of the day. And I think it's just something that maybe that's just how I am.
Mhm.
But it works the best for me. And I feel very good the next day. I feel recovered. I feel rested. And I feel ready to go. So for the most part, it's a clean diet. I do go out every once in a while. I have my cravings as well. Um,
Don't we all?
but exactly. But I try to stick to a clean diet for the most part.
Excellent. Well, I think most of us who are training for something, we definitely are in the same boat as you and trying to
Yeah,
be very disciplined.
it's a
And
hassle sometimes. It's a hassle, but
and it can be. I think people find it tough, and especially if you're if you're going to be going out, or if you've got a special event, as
mhm.
you said, an occasion, something like that. A lot of times you may say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't go," or have a competition coming up in a couple weeks, and that's something where you kind of have
Yeah,
to make
exactly,
that choice. So, and I think
exactly,
that's a choice you make for a reason, obviously. Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk, because I know a lot of people are probably interested in wondering, and maybe you don't do it yourself, but maybe you have some students that do it and you have kind of a tried and tested way, but just about cutting weight. Because I know in weightlifting, kettlebell lifting is a little bit different because a lot of the competitions we either weigh in the day before, or even at the
Hmm.
world championships, we weigh in the day we get there, and then we may compete a day or two later. So, cutting weight isn't, and rehydrating and refeeding isn't quite as I guess as rushed, because weightlifting, you're literally, I feel like you're most competitions, you're weighing in like an hour before your lift, right?
Yeah, you're weighing in
Yeah.
2 hours before you compete.
Okay. So tell us about that. Like if someone's trying to cut weight, what are some of the best ways you've either tried or seen or helped people with, and then kind of how you refeed and refuel after that?
So personally, I have never had to cut too much weight. I've cut the standard of about 2 to 3 kilos, which for lightweights like myself is normal. But it's never a hassle for me. What I like doing personally, and I know it's completely different from mixed martial arts and from a lot of other sports, because we do weigh in 2 hours before we're ready to go on the platform, and you have to be ready to go within those 2 hours. There isn't any sort of leeway where you can say, okay, I have a day to recover. So what I like to do is actually leave it for the last minute, believe it or not. I like to do it 1 or 2 days before the competition. I set myself to a specific diet. Sometimes I even do intermittent fasting for about 4 to 5 days.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to take as little time as possible to cut the weight, because it's not a significant amount that I'm cutting. But the reason I do that is because I don't want to be thinking about it for such a long period of time. I want to be as focused as I can be on every single session and not have to worry about, hey, where's my weight at? What am I doing today? What should my diet be like the following day? So I like to leave it to a couple of days before the competition, when the training is tapered off and it's just very easy weights, easy stuff. You go in, you get out. And I have the time to actually focus on my diet and mentally prep for, what I'm not going to eat for about 9 hours of the day, and I'll have a meal then, just so that I can cut the weight. I've never had to do a water cut either. So water wise, I stay hydrated throughout the day. I've never felt like I'm dehydrated, or I've never felt down from a weight cut that I've had to do. Given they're not significant, I know, but personally, I like to leave it closer to the day of the competition. And then after that, once I'm weighed in and I have those 2 hours to kind of gain back whatever I can, I like to eat a lot of soup and liquids.
Mm-hmm.
My body absorbs that the fastest, and typically the human body would absorb liquids the fastest. So I figure, why not have like a chicken noodle soup where you have your proteins, you have your carbs, and you also have pretty much a liquid solution for your body to absorb fast.
Yeah.
So that's what I like to do, and that's what a lot of our athletes do, even though most of them don't have the issue with weight cutting. But we did have a close call this last competition we had a couple weekends ago. One of our athletes, his name is Justin, had to cut about 5 kilos, so about 10 pounds before he competed. And he's the type of guy that is just he just doesn't really care about anything, really. He's a great athlete. He has great work ethic, and he puts in a lot of time and effort. But diet-wise, he's very, very bad. And we're working on it. We're working on creating a nutrition plan for him, and, following specific times of the day that you eat a specific meal. But he had a very close call this last competition. He almost weighed in over, because he did leave the weight cut for the last minute. And I guess he took a bad example from me, because I have to cut about 2 kilos. And 2 kilos for me is very easy to cut. 2 kilos for other people might not be as easy as me to cut. And he had 5 kilos to cut, which is significant since we compete in the same weight class. So he had a bit of a tough time with that. He decided to eat whatever he wanted throughout the week. So he only really had about 2 days to cut 5 kilos. He was pretty exhausted, but you can't really help someone if they don't want to help themselves. And he's just he's just in his head. And I think he was also nervous for this one, because he knew he had to hit specific numbers. So we're working on it, on how he approaches his next weight cut and what he does differently. So that's where it is right now.
And you're very right, because I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I run about 2 kilos over, so it's pretty easy just to cut back some water and some food, and it comes off. But when you're talking about 5 kilos, that 5 to 7, I feel like that's pretty significant amount.
For sure.
You kind of need a little bit more planning for that. So that
for sure, especially if you're in the lighter categories.
Because it gets harder to lose.
Exactly.
It gets harder to lose when you're lighter, and you have to start thinking about that. That's a tough challenge for sure.
You have nowhere to cut it from at one point.
Exactly.
If you have a low fat percentage and you've already done your water cut, there isn't much leeway.
Exactly. There's not much left. Just pulling from muscle.
Exactly. It gets hard at that point.
Yes. Yeah. And so tell us, what is your favorite pre-comp meal? I'm curious.
The day of, or the...
The
The
day
day of the
of.
comp,
Yeah.
well, it would be homemade chicken noodle soup.
Yep. Okay, good.
I
Because
have
you get your
no
hydration, you get your protein, you
exactly.
get your carbs. That's an excellent to
I
have.
have no idea how my mom makes it. I have never watched her make it, but it is the most delicious meal that I've ever had. And I look forward to competition sometimes just so that I could have that soup because she never makes it the same way. It's either me being very hungry
Yeah.
the day of the comp, or she just does something differently. I don't know which one it is, but it's my go-to. It's amazing, and I wouldn't switch it for anything.
Nice. Oh, that's
Yeah, I
good.
love it.
That's good. And let's talk about, so now we've talked about pre, let's talk about post. So, whether it's post comp or post training, recovery is so important, right? We don't make gains at the
Hmm.
gym. We make gains with our nutrition and recovery.
For sure.
So tell us a little bit about, how you make sure you recover the best possible way.
So obviously having a clean diet plays a massive role in recovery. Um, I've always been I've always been an athlete where I'm able to recover pretty fast from my training sessions and from competitions as well. So in the recovery aspect, I've never had too much trouble myself. Maybe I do some things wrong sometimes, but it works for me, and
Mhm.
it might not work for other people. But typically, what I like to do is just have a clean diet, get my 8 to 9 hours of sleep every night. Even though on school nights sometimes it's hard because you stay up late to finish up assignments or whatever it may be. So sometimes you need to compromise. But typically for me, it's sleep and diet. I feel like those are the two major things to physically recover
Yeah.
from the workouts that I do and from competitions as well.
Hmm.
I here and there I do take some Epsom salt baths as well, just to let off on any muscle exhaustion that I may have. But it's very basic. It's very basic. It's just diet and sleep.
Yeah. And what about, so I mean, I know a lot of people put a lot of focus on supplementation. And I mean,
Hmm.
you mentioned Epsom salts. Obviously, magnesium is really great for muscle repair and recovery and relaxation. So that's definitely something that Epsom salts can help with.
Hmm.
But what about everything else? Like, is there anything else that you use kind of in your training regimen for supplementation?
So I take pretty much the wellness essentials is what I like to call them.
Okay. Yep.
So multivitamin, fish oil, probiotics,
Hmm.
and protein powder.
Okay.
So I stick to those,
Yeah.
and I've been doing that for a couple of years, and it's been working. It's been working amazing. I've
Yeah.
had great results with it, and I would recommend it to anybody really, because if you think about it, a multivitamin, fish oils, and a probiotic, they're all essential to the human body. Fish oils you never eat enough of through your daily intake.
Right.
The multivitamin will help you obviously to stay up throughout the day and just feel more recovered. And then my probiotic I take because I want to make sure that my digestive system is all in order and intact, and it's working the way it should be.
Hmm.
Because I have had some issues in the past with GI tract problems.
Mm.
So
Very common with
I've learned
athletes. Very
to,
common.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've learned to take the right supplements at the right time to avoid that.
Great.
So yeah, in regards to vitamins, it's pretty much it's very basic. I mean, I take my BCAAs during my workout as well, but
Hmm.
that's about the extent to which I go
Yeah.
with supplements.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, we talked about physical, we talked about nutrition. Obviously, all those things are so important with regards to performance. And then I think the one part that I like to focus on first is mental mindset.
My
And
favorite.
right, I feel like so many coaches miss out on this whole,
Hmm.
we exercise the body, we think about what we're putting into it, but we don't exercise our mind. And that's what I feel like. The mind is the difference between competing and being on the podium at the end of the competition.
Hmm.
So, talk to me about mindset. Obviously, you have a very strong mindset. You've been a national champion 9 times. Tell us how you work on strengthening your mindset so that you can be on the top of that podium.
So during my training cycles, when I find it difficult to kind of stay in the right zone and go into sessions positive every time and whatnot. I like to do a lot of breathing techniques, and I learned that through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I started rolling about 4 years ago. Nothing crazy, nothing about belts or tournaments or any of that stuff. It was mostly to learn a different sport, and I also know that it helps a lot with mental toughness, because they do incorporate a lot of breathing exercises and a lot of yoga and a lot of kind of active thinking, in a way that it helps you to be able to put your body in a state where it's not stressed while you are actually performing a strenuous activity such as weightlifting. So I like to incorporate a lot of breathing techniques during my workout. Just kind of stress the heart out a little bit. Fast-paced breathing, slow-paced breathing, it'll all alter the way that your heart obviously contracts.
Yeah.
And I find that to be very helpful for my mind to focus on the heartbeat, so that it's not focusing on anything else. It's not thinking about, what am I going to eat for dinner tonight? Or, oh, well, this happened today. How could it have been avoided? Or I wonder how this person feels. It's breathe and focus on hearing what's happening within your body. So it's kind of like I try to link my mind to the rest of my body and communicate with myself, essentially. That's regarding training and recovery and whatnot. And even sometimes I would do it in class. When I find myself drifting away and I'm not paying attention to my lecture, or I'm not being efficient with my studying, I like to kind of take 15 to 20 minutes for myself, just to do a couple of breathing exercises, get back into the zone, get into my own head, talk with myself a little bit, and then get back out there and perform.
Good. Well, and I think it's definitely one of those things where, again, you kind of have to go back to basics to be able to refocus. And when people lose focus, that's when performance is it goes down, obviously, right? Because
sure.
when you're not focused on the goal either, and that makes it really difficult. So tell us about your most prized accomplishment so far.
Honestly, I have a bunch of trophies sitting behind me and a bunch of medals on a medal tree behind me. And when I look at the grand scheme of things, those are materialistic possessions. They're not something that necessarily makes me proud. They're something that makes me happy knowing that I've achieved that. But what really makes me proud is being in the sport for as long as I have. It's been 9 years. It's going to be 10 years actually in November. And being 10 years in a sport like weightlifting is really, really hard to do. Obviously, you're physically very, very exhausted all the time. It's mentally challenging and mentally draining, having to prep for a comp and go in with the right mindset, and even mentally work through training sessions when your body just doesn't want to do it, and when your body's not cooperating with you. So I would say that I'm most proud of just being involved in this sport for as long as I have and performing at the level I have for 10 years. I'm just proud of myself for being able to overcome the adversity for those 10 years and go through what I have. So that's what I'm most proud of.
Well, that's amazing. And tell us, so, I mean, as an athlete, everybody has struggles that they have to work through. And usually, or sometimes, there's a turning point or something that is significant that brings about a big change. Did you go through anything like that?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. There hasn't been any sort of major setbacks in my career. There hasn't been times where I have had to sit down and be like, okay, I need to drastically change this about what I'm doing. There hasn't been anything like that yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure everybody encounters a big setback in their career, any athlete in any sport. And I'm trying to prepare myself for that time. So I'm trying to physically and mentally become stronger and become the best that I can. So when that time comes, and when I do have to go through, a major setback, I'm able to do it just as well as I go through my training sessions.
Yeah.
So I try to go in with a mindset of, this is a training session. You live and you learn. Um, you might not do well and you might do well. Those are the only two things that can really happen. It's going to go your way and it's not going to go your way. That's how simply I like to look at it. Because at the end of the day, there is no need to dive so deep into it and overthink everything about the sport. A lot of people do, and that's why a lot of people can't reach that level that I have, or maybe my dad has. But I find that it's more mental than it is physical. And in regards to physical injuries, those are just minor things that will push you back maybe a couple of months or a year. But you will be able to come back from it. The sport isn't dangerous. It's not a sport that you can get seriously hurt from, unless you're doing it by yourself and you have nobody telling you what the right way to do it is.
Right.
But that's how it is in any sport that I've been involved in personally. You need to be taught how to do it properly so that you don't have to encounter those major setbacks and those injuries and whatnot later on. So I feel like I've been given a good foundation and a good basic knowledge on the sport to be able to avoid that, at least for as long as I have been. So nothing major that I can really think of.
Well, and something that you just mentioned there is very important, and that is when you really want to excel at something, having a coach that understands what it takes to get to a certain level, which is the level maybe that you want to get to, right, at some point, regardless of what that level is, whether it's a beginner trying to get to a competition or what have you. It's very important to have someone who understands that duress, both mentally and physically, so that they can share their experience and their knowledge so that you don't get injured. Because I find that it happens so often where, maybe they have a coach that isn't quite right for them, or maybe isn't quite at that level. And then they do get injured, in whatever sport it is. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they have a bigger problem and they've got to start over. And that's not a great place to be in for anybody. Not. Yeah. So very important to have the right guidance.
And then you have the cases with these major lifters that, they go to an international meet and, they dislocate an elbow, or, they go through something that you shouldn't have to, and that you shouldn't be put in a situation where you have to injure yourself to do something major in the sport. That's another thing that I really appreciate my dad doing for me, is he's never pushed me past the point that he thinks is reasonable. Sometimes our mentalities differ, and I'm an overachiever and I'm a perfectionist. I want to be the best I can be in whatever I'm doing. But sometimes you need to lay back, and how can you define winning if you don't lose?
How do you appreciate it?
Exactly. How do you learn to love what you do if you haven't went through the struggle? So for me personally, I mean, I haven't been a winner my whole life. I know what it's like to be at a big stage and come in second or come in third or whatever the case may be. And that's when you really learn that if I had pushed myself those extra 2 kilos to win, what could have happened? Was I physically prepared to do it? Was I mentally prepared to do it? And at the end of the day, you look back on it and it happened. It can't change now. You can't go back in time and redo it. And I wouldn't want to, because I've made a lot of mistakes from which I've learned. I've made mistakes from which I haven't learned, and I keep repeating. And I know that I'm doing it. I just need to consciously tell myself and remind myself, listen, this is what's happened in the past and this is what you need to change. so actively work on it. I don't think that there's a need to go to an extent where it's a do or die situation. Like a lot of athletes on the world stage do, is they go for some ridiculous numbers to just try and win. And, you know, some of them are at the end of their careers, but there's nothing better than going out of the sport happy,
Yeah.
and knowing that you did everything that you could. You don't want to go out of the sport with an injury. You don't want to go out of the sport with a major setback. So I don't understand it, why people go out there and they do these ridiculous feats, but it happens, and you just have to be smart. You have to be a smart athlete.
Yeah.
That's what it really boils down to.
Yeah, I agree. So tell us what's next for you. What's on, like, what's your big goal? What do you eventually want to accomplish in the sport?
So I've been, ever since May, when senior nationals was, I've been very involved in coaching. I've been shadowing my dad. I've been going to different gyms. I'm leading my own weightlifting team right now at Apex Training Center. It's by Yorkdale Mall here in Toronto. I have 7 people that I'm coaching right now. They're all beginners. They're all still learning, and I'm very, very happy with where I am right now. I have a lot of people asking me, and maybe this is a perfect time to address it, if I'm done competing and if I'm retired as an athlete. And no, I'm not, because there is a lot of things I need to do. There's a lot of milestones I have yet to reach.
Yeah.
There's a lot of curves that I still want to go through and experience. It's just a time for me to do a little bit of self-reflection, to see what mistakes I have made in the past, and what I can do to become the best I can be in what I do. So I'm taking a little bit of time for myself, and to also see the other side of weightlifting, because I never really know how my dad feels when he's at a comp. Like, I know how I feel when I'm going for a national record, but what's going through his head? It's always been a question that I've asked myself after competitions, and I've asked him too. He's never given me a clear-cut answer. So I think, you know what, if I do this firsthand, then there's no better way to gain experience than to do it.
That's
So
right.
I'm a lot more involved in coaching right now, and this season is going to be free of competing for me, just to focus on that aspect of the sport and get a little bit more experience in that area. But next season I will be back, and there's some good things to come, because I have a lot planned for myself, and my dad has a lot planned for me this coming season, and we're working on launching some new programs and testing them out on me. I've been the guinea pig for 9 years, so
So why
you know.
stop now?
So
Just keep
exactly, why
going.
stop now? We're so deep into it, might as well just keep going and see what
Yeah.
happens. So yeah, I will be back on the platform. I'm still training. I haven't stopped, but I am coaching right now, and I do want to see that side more in depth than I have. So
Amazing. Well,
that's what's coming up.
I feel like when you're talking about your break, obviously just from the season, I think you're going to be coming back with a vengeance. I feel like that's what's coming.
I hold no grudges towards anybody in the sport, but there have been some things that have happened that have, they've hit me, and they've hurt me. They've hurt me both mentally and physically. And it's not so much a vengeance towards a specific person or an organization. It's more so I'm taking the time right now to become better, and to become better than what I was, because I'm not competing with anyone. I'm not trying to be better than anyone. I'm trying to be better than myself.
Yeah.
And there's no other way to be the best if you don't believe that you're the best, and you don't show yourself that, hey, I'm beating myself every single time I step foot on that platform. And there's a lot of things I'm sure you've probably seen on social media going around with me and my little feud with Quebec and their weightlifting organization. But there is things that, you know, I'll get it back. I'll get it back. Some things have happened in the past that shouldn't have, and I'll be back.
You know, and you know
I'll
what?
be back on their turf.
I feel like every different sport always has a little bit of organizational things that happen, right? I feel like that's kind of across the board on a lot of different sports.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that that weightlifting is no different. But it sounds,
it's not different, and
yeah.
it's been it's new for I'm not blaming anybody. If even I'm actually praising the Canadian Weightlifting Federation for doing what they have with our athletes, because this past World Championships is probably one of the best overall performances that Canada has in weightlifting. And you know, Canadian weightlifting has changed some things. They've improved some things, and I feel like they're doing an overall amazing job with their athletes. There's a lot of things to fix, but all of that comes with time.
Yeah,
it comes with them learning from their mistakes, and it comes from them seeing what they miss out on.
yes.
You know, there's athletes that deserve to be in the spot that they're in, and there's athletes that are not ready to be in the spot that they're put in. So I feel like with time, the Canadian Weightlifting Federation will come around, and they're gonna be able to distinguish between the different athletes there are in the sport and how they should accommodate them. But it's not so much a vengeance I'm coming back with. It's more of I'm coming back, and I will show you what an athlete that is world class does.
Yeah.
It's more of that, because I have all the resources. I have an Olympian. I have an Olympic medalist. I have a person that set a world record in 1985 that hasn't been touched. Nobody's come close to that record in the weight classes above and below.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of resources that I can use to become the best that I can. And I'm also 19, so
yeah.
I have a long career ahead of me.
Absolutely.
Piros Dimas competed at 4 Olympics. Why can't I do it?
Yeah.
Right. So I have a lot. I have a lot to do and achieve in the sport still.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, I think that's excellent, and I think you're taking a very educated and mature approach about it, and really thinking it through with exactly what your goals are, and making sure that you're going to be able to accomplish them the best way possible. So you're obviously located in Toronto. You mentioned Apex Gym as well as the Academy of Lions, the VARBANOV School of Weightlifting. So if somebody wants to get involved with lifting, if they're a beginner, they want to learn, or if they're intermediate, they want to get better, how do they find you?
So the easiest way to reach out to us would be either through my Instagram with direct message, or even email info@varbanovschoolofweightlifting @gmail.com. Those two ways, by email and by social media, would be the easiest way to reach out to us. Or even people just come in and drop in, come into the gym, ask for us. We're there Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and you can talk with us in person, over email, over the phone, whatever works best for anyone.
Excellent. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you're at Academy of Lions on those 3 days. Is that right?
So Monday, Wednesdays, Friday, we are at Academy of Lions from 5:30 p.m. until about 8 to 8:30 p.m.
Okay.
And I myself coach at Apex Mondays and Wednesdays from 6:30 to 9 p.m. and on Saturdays from 10:30 a.m. to 12 to noon.
Excellent.
I am at Apex Monday, Wednesday, Saturdays. My parents that lead the VARBANOV team are there Monday, Wednesday, Friday at Academy of Lions.
Excellent. So lots of opportunity, and really no excuses for anyone who wants to really learn the technical lifts of weightlifting and be able to excel at those. There's lots of opportunities to be able to do that with you guys.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of coaches and organizations and clubs that specify in Olympic lifting, and I just want people to know that we do things a little bit differently. We we will never go after the athlete and try to show them off on their first day, or try to kind of break them down and tell them, no, you've been taught completely wrong, you need to do this, this, and this. We like to keep a fun atmosphere in which you feel welcomed. We like to create a community for people to feel like they're at home, and to feel like, hey, listen, nobody's better than anybody here. We're all here to learn. We're all here to be the best that we can be. And if you are better than yourself every single session, be it a little thing you realize to do differently mentally, or a little thing you realize, to do different on your technique, we encourage you to be better for yourself. Because at the end of the day, people that get involved with the sport, you're either going to want to compete and be a winner, or you're going to do it because you want to live a healthy lifestyle. So I feel like we bring different things to the table, such as, giving you that fun environment, and giving you the welcoming environment to train and to be better. And a lot of gyms don't know how to do that. A lot of gyms like you to come in and, you're here because you got to win medals, or you're here, you got to compete for the club, you got to win these competitions. We take a different approach. We want you to have fun and enjoy it. So
that's pretty
if you're
awesome.
looking for 2.5 hours of fun and feeling tired the next day, then come and join us.
But at least you have the next day to recover.
Exactly. You get the day to recover.
We talked about how important recovery is.
Exactly.
Well, that's amazing. Nick, thanks so much for joining us. So for those of you watching, thank you so much for tuning into the YouTube channel. Make sure you give us a thumbs up if you like this podcast, and subscribe so you know when all the brand new episodes come out. And if you're listening, thank you so much. And make sure you're subscribing on your favorite podcast channel so you know exactly when the next brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast comes out. Thanks for listening to today's show. Head on over to Killah, KILLAH.org to gain access to some amazing resources that will help you gain energy, rid yourself of debilitating symptoms, and be the best version of you. Remember to give this podcast a like and follow me on Instagram at coach.killah. I'm here every 2 weeks with a brand new episode of the Human Optimization Podcast. Until next time.